shiny Pokemon. Players will spend countless hours trying to get their hands on one. But of course, not all shinies are created equal. Some shinies will look really good, while some really bad. And I will be talking about the bad side with today's video, where I'll be talking about the worst shiny from each generation. But before we start, I want to include one rule. I won't be including any shinies that barely change, or else this video will just be filled with them and it will just be boring. So if the shiny looks very noticeably different, it will count. So with that, let's start with Generation 1. If we were including shinies that barely changed, Gengar would definitely be the worst. But since we're not, the worst definitely is Nidoqueen. The Nidoran line started off really well. The male and female swapped colours. Nidorino and Nidorina followed this. But when it got to the final stages, something just went horribly wrong. Nidoking still followed this trend and turned a nice shade of blue, while Nidoqueen turned into this. How did this happen? I know the shinies from Gens 1 to 5 are left up to palette swaps, but Nintendo could have easily changed it, like they did with Charizard's shiny for example. And compared to the rest of the Nidoran shiny line, Nidoqueen just looks so out of place. And that is why Nidoqueen is the worst shiny from Gen 1. There were a few Pokemon that I was considering for the worst, but after much thought, I have decided that the worst of Johto is Mischievous? Wait, how do you pronounce this thing?
Mischievous!
Okay, there we go, Mischievous. I know, another green shiny. I know there's the whole joke about green shinies being terrible, but honestly, not all of them are bad. It really just depends on the shade of green that is used. But Mischievous is not one of those good green ones. Mischievous turns into a disgusting puke green. It just makes Mischievous look so unwell. So the worst shiny for Hoenn is kinda breaking my rule. I mean, the shiny barely changes, but it's still a noticeable change, so I thought it should count. And that is shiny Kecleon. The reason why I consider Kecleon the worst shiny of Hoenn is because of what it could have been. If you are familiar with the Mystery Dungeon games, you are probably well aware of the purple Kecleon that appears in the game. And if somebody has never seen a shiny Kecleon before Mystery Dungeon, it could easily be mistaken for its shiny. And now imagine this. Somebody went shiny hunting for a Kecleon expecting this, but when they finally encounter that shiny, they find out that its shiny actually looks like this. Imagine how disappointed that person would be. And apart from the blue stripe across its body, nothing else changes. I know Mystery Dungeon came out after Gen 3, but still, they could have easily have changed it. Diamond and Pearl, I'm going to go back to a Pokemon I've already talked about. Mischievous, because its evolution, Mismagius, has the worst evolution from Gen 4. Like its pre-evolution, it also turns into a disgusting puke green colour. And in my opinion, I would say its shiny is worse than its pre-evolutions. One thing that makes this shiny worse than Mischievous's is the fact that the orange chips Mischievous had turns into green. And like the body, it's not a good green either. If the tip stayed orange, then maybe the shiny would have been slightly better, but it still would have been the worst from Gen 4. For Black and White, I was considering putting Tranquil here, but I've already talked enough about green shinies. But luckily enough, there was a shiny that I thought was worse enough to replace it, and that is Shiny Crocodile. So Shiny Crocodile was one that could have been really good if it wasn't for one thing: the shades. If the black around Crocodile's eyes stayed well black, this would have been an actually decent shiny. Like, look at those little beady eyes. It just makes him look less intimidating. And if you are known as the Intimidation Pokemon and have Intimidate as a ability, that is definitely not a good thing. Just put the sunglasses back on him and it will be a good shiny. This is where shinies start to get really good. Because from Gen 6 onwards, all the shinies were chosen and not left up to palette swaps. So choosing the worst is more difficult. But after much thought, I decided that the worst is Yveltal, because it just looks like somebody skinned it alive, and it just looks like a T-bone steak. Like, you would look at Yveltal and just want to cook it up. It's just such an unappealing shiny to me. I mean, that's all I really have to say about Yveltal. That it just looks like a bit of meat. With Alola, it was easier to decide which one is the worst, because in my opinion this generation has some really strong shinies. But out of all of them, I'd say the worst is Shiinotic. This shiny is just so boring compared to its original colour scheme. It's just such a boring shiny. In the wild, mushrooms come in all sorts of colours. Any of these would have been good for Shiinotic, but they decided to go with brown. Like, even something basic like a toadstool mushroom would have been good. Shiinotic had the potential to be such a nice shiny, but it was just wasted. And finally, on to Gala. And just like Alola, this generation had a lot of strong shinies, so picking the worst was easy. And the worst is Shiny Alcremie. It just looks burnt, which I'm guessing is the intention, but just because it has a meaning behind it doesn't mean it's good. Alcremie does not pull off black well, but I do have one good thing to say about Shiny Alcremie, and it's that Shiny Gigantamax Alcremie actually looks good. So hey, at least I have something positive to say about one of these shinies. Alright, so that's the end of the video. Do you agree with my opinion? Was there a shiny that you think I should have included on this list? Did I include one of your favourites? Feel free to answer those questions in the comments below. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed. Like, comment and subscribe if you want to see more content by me. And don't forget to ring that bell below so you know when I drop a new video. And I will see you all later.